Sophie is a successful and wealthy woman who wants to spice up her life with a passionate romance. She takes on a young lover, seeing him more as a source of pleasure than a life partner. But when it's time to part ways, things turn out to be not so simple. The man is not ready to let her go and begins to take desperate measures to regain her attention. His name is Elliot. He is 33 years old, and he is just a waiter in an expensive restaurant. Under the mask of luxury and pretentiousness, he sometimes allows himself small sins. A piece of someone else's appetizer, a glass of wine from someone else's cellar. One day, among hundreds of faces, he catches the eye of a woman who is not just evaluating his work, but seems to single him out from the crowd. During her break, she approaches him herself, wasting no time on unnecessary words. A room number, a promise of passion, and an invitation. Without hesitation, Elliot grabs a bottle of wine and heads to her apartment. There he learns her name, Sophie. A few glasses, a quick conversation, and the night turns into an unbridled celebration of the body. In the morning, as she leaves, Sophie thanks him and hints that this is not the end. She wants to meet again. Elliot returns home, where he is met by his strict mother, unhappy with her son's absence during the night. Soon Sophie contacts him again and makes an offer that takes his breath away. She has a business trip to France and invites him to go with her. She will pay for all expenses, including first-class tickets. For a simple guy, it seems like a miracle. In Paris, they are overcome by unbridled passion. Sophie literally doesn't let him out of her sight. In the evening, they go to a restaurant where it becomes clear that they are complete opposites. She is a successful marketing specialist for a pharmaceutical company. He is a waiter who dropped out of college, whose only passion is photography. But Sophie doesn't care. She is attracted to his youth and charm. Later, they attend an erotic show, which only fuels their desire. They end the night right on the street, forgetting about everything else in the world. In the morning, Sophie goes about her business while Elliot gets the opportunity to wander around Paris. Inspired by the beauty of the city, he buys a camera and starts taking pictures. His first model is Sophie, in her underwear, in a room where the boundaries between art and intimacy are blurred. Back in the US, he shares his impressions with his mother, gives her a souvenir, and promises to show her Paris one day. But in his heart, he already belongs completely to Sophie. At work, he thinks only of her. In his heart, she has replaced everything else. Inspired, he invites her on a date himself. Sophie agrees and sets a date. His mother, learning about the new woman in her son's life, is happy for him, and even decides to leave the house to get a new hairstyle. When the evening of their date arrives, Sophie expects a leisurely stroll or dinner, but Elliot unexpectedly invites her to the theater to see a play in which his friend is performing. Sophie does not find this entertainment particularly exciting. She openly dozes off during the performance and then suggests going to a bar for a strong drink. There they were joined by the actress and her boyfriend, to whom Elliot immediately began bragging about Paris and his mad passion for Sophie. The woman felt uncomfortable, especially when her friend's glances clearly said, "He's talking too much." Sophie politely referred to the early morning and decided to leave. Elliot didn't just walk her home. He bluntly stated that he expected intimacy. Sophie reluctantly went home with him. In the room, everything went as usual, but something had changed. She no longer burned with the same passion. Elliot noticed her coldness, and Sophie soon called a taxi. So that his mother wouldn't catch them, he quietly led her out, making up a ridiculous story about a quarrelsome neighbor. But as soon as she was out of sight, driven by jealousy, he followed her. And what he saw through the window of her apartment was a shock. Sophie was drinking wine with another man. Elliot returned home, devastated, crying on the doorstep, while his mother tried to calm him down. The next day, Sophie returned to her busy life. The office, presentations, colleagues. For her, it was a normal day, but for Elliot, it was a disaster. He wrote her messages, but she ignored them. In the evening, Sophie found solace in the arms of a new man, and later in boxing training, as if trying to knock the last remnants of tension out of herself. And when Elliot demanded her attention again, Sophie sent him a long letter. It was over between them. But the guy didn't give up. He came straight to her office and accused her of cheating. Sophie replied that she didn't have a lover, and even if she did, what business was it of his? Their romance was in the past. She thanked him for the moments they had spent together, but asked him not to seek further encounters. Elliot struggled to control himself, barely holding back tears, but Sophie remained adamant. She even blocked his number. However, he found a new way. He sent photos of his naked body from another phone and then notes. Gradually, his persistence turned into obsessive stalking. He began to show up everywhere she went. At a meeting with her sister, Sophie noticed him at a bar. It was too obvious. Then a new message arrived. "I'm going to play with fire, and there's nothing you can do about it." Sophie began to feel afraid. The elevator in her building opened by itself on her floor, and envelopes appeared under her door. In one of them, she found photos from Paris, pictures taken by Elliot. It was starting to feel like blackmail. Sophie decided to meet him face to face. He was sitting in a bar, drunk, pathetic and arrogant at the same time. He repented and offered to start all over again. She calmly explained that feelings are not eternal. They pass, and nothing can change that. In the end, she gave him the money and asked him to disappear from her life. But when she left the bar, she heard the sound of coins clinking behind her. Elliot threw the money back and, enraged, began to chase her. Sophie showed that she could stand up for herself. With one blow, she knocked him to the ground and humiliated him by showering him with the same bills. It seemed like that should have stopped him. But he continued to call, now at her work. Then Sophie decided to find out more about him and went to his actress friend. She told her that Elliot did not live alone at all, but shared a house with his mother, who was ill and hardly ever left the apartment. To the actress, he had always been just an acquaintance, and she had never noticed anything strange about him before. Everything changed after he met Sophie. He lost his head. Sure enough, Sophie soon ran into him on the street. Elliot said in a pleading voice that she was the only light in his grey life. But all these confessions were met with her coldness. In response, he received a slap in the face. Sophie continued to seek new experiences and new men, and Elliot sank deeper and deeper into depression. At night, she noticed that the elevator doors had opened again, and later found the envelope with the money she had given him. So he had been in her house. That was the last straw. Sophie went to his mother's house, introduced herself as an employee of a medical company, and offered to participate in an experimental treatment program. When Elliot returned, he found her in the house. For him, it was a warning sign. That evening, she received a message from him saying that he was giving up. It seemed that Sophie had finally escaped the clutches of her obsessed lover. But the next morning, a new blow awaited her. Approaching the office building, she froze. Dozens of printed photos of her posing in her underwear were scattered on the sidewalk. In a panic, Sophie began to collect the photos, while passers-by turned around curiously. With great difficulty, she gathered her strength and entered the office. But another cold shower awaited her there. her boss announced that he would personally give a presentation to the French partners, and added with relief that they were delayed and had not yet arrived. To Sophie, it sounded like a humiliating sentence. Her reputation was tarnished, her authority shaken. Despair led her back to the bar. But this time, she decided it was time to take action. Making no secret of her contempt, she headed for Elliot. As always, he was waiting for her, hoping for reconciliation, for a new burst of passion. But instead of an embrace, he got a punch in the face. Sophie showed him by her own example. This is how everyone who decides to turn someone else's life into a nightmare ends up. This scene was a kind of catharsis for her. Sophie returned to work, no longer broken, but composed and confident. She stood in front of the Frenchman and gave a presentation, as if there had been no upheavals in her life. She played her role flawlessly. Meanwhile, Elliot, sitting at home with a broken nose, alarmed his mother. The woman, accustomed to her son's eccentricity, now saw him in a new light, obsessed and beaten. But Elliot himself was full of a different conviction. He told his mother that he had finally found true love.